Bonjour and welcome to Chateau Garrow. I'm Garrow Kedigian, New York City interior designer, and I'm so excited to share with you my fabulous Parisian pied-à-terre. Come take a look.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Like and subscribe for more.
I have loved Paris ever since I was a child. We used to come here all the time. My brother lived here for a while and I used to visit. And I always said I would have an apartment here. And as I became a designer in New York City, I would bring clients shopping here quite often. And it was really only after the pandemic that I thought, you know what, it's time to get a place here. So I started my search. It took a while to find, and I was so thrilled when I walked into this apartment. I saw exactly what I was looking for. I had seen a lot of apartments in Paris, and you know, it's a fairly interesting city, even though the architecture here is beautiful. The buildings are kind of awkwardly shaped, and I'm like a total classicist, and I love symmetry, and I love you know, architecture. So you know, the interiors for me really needed to be very structured, and it was hard to find an apartment that really fit that bill. So the minute I walked in the door here, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Oh my God, this layout is perfect. The windows were perfectly symmetrical. There were two fireplaces, you know, at opposite sides of the main living room space. It was perfect. It was great architecture in the floors. And of course, the most important thing that I was looking for from day one was ceiling height. I really wanted an apartment with really tall ceilings. Of course, my main residence is in New York City, and most of you who are big fans of Homeworthy might remember me and my home tour of the Carlisle, my apartment at the Carlisle in New York, which is my home base in New York City. The best part of having an apartment in Paris is the minute you get off the plane, you can get in a taxi and come to your own home. I don't know why, but all the airplanes arrive early morning in Paris, and of course, as it is in Paris, everything is inconvenient. The hotel rooms are never ready until 3 p.m. So after years of doing that, I was just so relieved, and I pinched myself to think, wow, I actually can come home to a place of my own here in this city. Apartments in Paris have the most amazing architectural character, and typically you get these wonderful ceiling heights. So when I bought this apartment, I was enamored with this crown molding in this entrance foyer, and it was all about grandeur, 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 and I wanted to play up the fabulous scale of this entrance foyer. So I used this wonderful marbleized ceiling wallpaper. It's actually from Scalamandre. And it's marbleized and has this wonderful red and blue. And it really is an homage to the architecture and the marbleized and the fanciness of these grand old Parisian apartments. On the walls, I did this wonderful appliqué. It's just a very simple half bead molding that I had my contractor paint in gilded gold. And right in front of it, I put this lovely little banquette. And you know, when you add upholstery into an entrance foyer, it really makes it feel as though the foyer is, you know, an additional little seating area. So when I actually have an overflow of guests and a party in here, and have an overflow of people in the living room, they actually come and, you know, congregate here. I loved the beautiful chevron floors throughout the apartment, and I really worked very meticulously with my contractor to clean them, and I wanted to preserve them as much as possible. Having a grand entrance foyer is always an opportunity for me to decorate and gild the lily. So I always like to place, you know, furniture pieces in an entrance foyer to really make it feel like it's decorated. So for instance, in this room, I put this wonderful chest of drawers, and opposite I have this fantastic Biedermeier bookcase. And I always like to, you know, decorate bookcases with sort of eccentric objects, not just books. I tucked this fabulous little painting in there. You know, I've been shopping the Paris flea markets ever since I was a kid, you know, for clients, and of course every time I go I pick up stuff for myself. And I love to have an eccentric mix of things. I always feel like the home is really a reflection of your personality, and it's an important thing to have, you know, wonderful objects that really reflect your personality. And of course, I'm an eccentric, so of course I have a lot of eccentric little things, like for instance this fabulous little tempiero, which is actually quite heavy. It's very heavy. And then this wonderful, this is actually really sort of like a fabulous little find. It's like actually an underside of a bomb shell. And you can see that it says the size of the artillery on the back, and somebody had installed this Canadian coin in there. I thought that was very clever. And this fabulous bust. I love busts, and I always think that they add a lot of character and a lot of strength to a space. So I positioned him right here. In Paris, they actually define apartments by the size of the square meter, which is totally confusing to me. I don't understand any of that language, and they're like, oh, X amount square meters, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. So in New York City, we always go by square feet, and I sort of know what the square footage is. It's probably around 1,200 square feet here. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, but the living rooms in Paris tend to be small. So the same was true with this apartment. So I decided that I would, you know, remove the wall between the main living room and the second bedroom and really create this grand salon-like living room. Of course, you know, I'm so grand, and I love to have a grand interior. And it's really great. It's wonderful to entertain, to have people over. I specifically bought this apartment actually for my 50th birthday. I know, can you believe I'm 50? Tragique. And I actually had a bunch of people over, and it was a great big party, and I just really love to entertain, and having great grand spaces for entertaining is key. And voila, here is my fabulous grand salon living room. In Paris, I found that there are quite a few apartments that are large, but they have small living spaces. So this room, the wall between the living room and actually the second bedroom was removed to create the grandeur of the space. And this is what I loved about this apartment, is really the ceiling heights and the size of this wonderful salon room. You have these double-sided fireplaces on either end with these wonderful pairs of mirrors. Again, there's my mirror trick. And the mirror trick is also, you know, pervasive in the amphithéâtre, because you'll see how I used it when we go through into the next room. The room was actually quite wonderful because of the symmetry. And really what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a string of intimate seating areas within this large space. It reminded me of a much larger, much grander, iconic sort of Parisian style hotel particulier, so to speak. And the room really had this great symmetry about it. You know, I had 2 fireplaces on either side, so I created these 2 doorways going into the dining room adjacent, and on the opposite side we created these 2 bookcases that really reflect the balance and the symmetry for the space. It's really lovely. Those of you who follow me on Instagram really know that I love my Greek key carpet. It's really quite iconic, and you see it a lot in my interiors. So this was a perfect opportunity to sort of infuse a bit of a modern character into a space which is really quite classic and wonderful. So I used the Greek key carpet in here. I love the scale of it. I think it really, really fills the room beautifully. And it also helps me divide the room up into smaller, intimate seating groupings. So in the foreground area, I have this fabulous little sofa seating area. A lot of the pieces in my apartment I found at the Paris flea markets. I love shopping the Paris flea markets, and finding, you know, wonderful eccentric objects are amazing, such as this amazing little Art Nouveau sort of little brass bowl. I just found this, and even the underside is gorgeous. And of course, this Kelvin Laverne coffee table. I bought this actually at the flea markets too. A lot of the pieces that I have in here were actually in my house in Montreal originally. When I bought my apartment in Paris, I ended up shipping the stuff that I bought at the Paris flea markets back to Paris because I really loved having it here. But again, the eccentric mix of things to me is super important. You know, for instance, this fabulous little tray that I bought when I was in Morocco, you know, next to this this very eccentric little multicolored, I think this is Gustavian, And then these wonderful candlesticks from Michael Aram. I love, again, they continue the branch form from the branch display over there, and they sit on top of the Calvin Laverne table that actually has leaves and branches on it. So it's sort of a very subtle play. And here's a great trick. When you actually want to have a coffee table on your coffee table, open it to your favorite page, because it's always a great way to start a conversation when you have guests over and they come to sit down and they're like, oh, this book happens to be open to this page. And then you can just, delve right into the conversation about why it is open to that page, because it's your favorite part of the book. So on this end of the room, I designed these two banquette seating areas that really reflect each other. And what I call a near pair. Sometimes it's fun to be a little bit playful with symmetry by making it a little bit asymmetrical. So you'll see here that, on one side I have this gigantic stone coffee table. It's low, so it's not too imposing. But on the other side, I actually have a little bit more delicate pair of little tables. These are fabulous little tables. These I bought in the Paris flea market as well. They're amazing. And I love to be very playful with my pillows. Those of you who know my work know this, that I love pillows. Pillows. And I'm not afraid to mix patterns. I'm not afraid to mix textures. And people are often afraid, and they when you show them these fabrics together, on a small color palette, they're just like, oh my goodness, how would you mix these together? But look how amazing they are. And they really, hold the space beautifully, and they're playful. I love my giant canvas art. Those of you who follow me on Instagram also know that I do a lot of that. I, just love to do these iconic sort of classic images printed onto canvas that really, gives the space a classical feeling, but also printed on the canvas with a very straight return side gives it over a little bit of a modern interpretation of a very classic detail. The architecture of the room was very strong, so I really took my cues from that. These fireplaces, look how gorgeous these are. This is amazing. This is a beautiful Verde marble. So these two built-in mirrors on either side of the room help me bring the language of the architecture of the fireplaces up to the ceiling. These two built-in bookcases are really sort of designed like pairs of doors that really kind of reflect the amphithéâtre of the other doors on the opposite side of the room, so that the two elevations on the two ends of the living room are actually perfectly symmetrical, which I love. It's really, really eccentric. And I love to have low chairs. I think low chairs really augment ceiling height. These are the loveliest little slipper chairs. I have these made by my upholstery workroom in Canada. They're wonderful, and I think that they're very friendly, and a lot of people love to just plop in and sit down on them. This is a wonderful little vintage Baker chair that I bought. This is actually in a thrift shop in New York City, and this is my own fabric design. I had this fabric done by Peter Fasano, and I designed it, and they printed it for me. Isn't that fabulous? And then the pair of banquettes on either side of the living room on this side of the room are sort of like, they're very casual. They're armless, and they're almost like bench-style banquettes. They're very characteristic of the work that I do. I use these all the time. My upholsterer makes these for me all the time. And I feel like they're very friendly, and people love to come and sit in this corner. It's really fun. And they have these wonderful end tables that really, they really are punctuation marks to the two banquettes that sit in this corner. The antique mirror tops are actually vintage and original. And then a really fun sort of whimsical nod to the Greek key are these great green mid-century modern lamps with the little collar of the Greek key going through. It's just fabulous, isn't it? I love to do a lot of mirror work. In my apartment at the Carlisle, if you remember, I had done mirrored jams. So in this apartment, I loved the fact that the sky could be reflected in mirrors on the sill. So if you come and stand here, you can actually see the sky. This apartment happens to be on the first floor in Paris, and in Paris, the city was actually developed way before the elevator. So the first floor apartments tend to be the grandeur apartments, because when the city was built, those are the apartments that were, you know, the prize apartment. It was called La Belle Étage. So that was actually the coveted floor. So now, even though in New York everybody wants to be in the penthouse, in Paris the more grand apartments are actually the first floor apartments. So it's a really great trick in order to bring the sky in, even though you're sort of on a low floor. It's really fun to have a mirrored windowsill. And those of you who watched my Homeworthy tour of the Carlisle in New York City would know that it would not be a Garrow Kedigian designed room without a hidden TV somewhere. Can you find the TV on this wall? Here's the key. This is the secret. I hide the remote control in this little urn. Isn't that fabulous? So where the banquette seating area is really for a larger group of people, the foreground area is really for when you have a smaller, intimate group of people. And I love this little area. It's, you know, organized around the foreground fireplace, and I have these fabulous Janssen chairs that I bought, you know, also at the Paris Flea Market, and this wonderful little Japan table, this really quirky little vase, which is fantastic. And I love, you know, to really, again, put pillows on everything. So I have these wonderful little eye-cut looking little velvet pillows that I actually trimmed on the back with a contrasting color. I think that that's really fun. And then those of you who know me and know my work and have seen my apartment at the Carlisle remember that I love to do these wonderful printed canvas art pieces. And so this is actually a fantastic piece that I actually had it in my house in Montreal. I printed it, you know, oversized scale. And I love the dramatic sort of old master art character of the piece. It's just printed onto canvas. And then just giving it a very simple square reveal return gives it a very modern effect in a, you know, in a more traditional subject matter. I think it's a great mix of modern and traditional together. Again, mirroring things is a great strategy for making, you know, spaces feel much larger. This is a lovely little mirrored side table which has an antique mirrored top on it, and I found these lovely little candlesticks. Aren't these amazing? These are fabulous. They're like sort of a faux tortoise shell. You know, I think they're cast in resin, but the minute I saw them, I was like, these are divine. I love the movement, I love the character. And then when you put them on a mirrored top, it's like actually just a, you know, like a continuation of the Cuckoo Bananas candlestick base. It's fabulous. You know, one of the things that I love is, you know, furniture pieces that are a little eccentric. This is a fantastic console table that I actually purchased. I purchased this in New York from the Antique and Artisan Center. And it had these wonderful little swag nail head trim on it. And the minute I saw it, I said, oh, you know, doesn't it look so French in a way? It has like this wonderful little swag detail. So it was perfect to come into my apartment here. This little bench is a custom design. I had this made by my upholstery workroom, and it has a little Greek key G on the side. Look at that, fabulous. And it goes really well with my carpet. Love that. And then I always love to use branches in all my interiors because it always adds a little bit of a raw and, you know, natural effect. You know, it was funny, I went out looking for branches, and in New York it was so easy to find them because it's Central Park, but Paris, they're so organized and they collect branches off the street like, you know, fastidiously. It was hard to find, actually. So these aren't as good as I would normally like them to be. The color story for this room was actually inspired by a kitchen that I had seen in a Milan design showroom a few years ago. And it was this vibrant, wonderful tomato red, and it had this blue ceiling, and it really spoke to me. And I said, you know, one day in one of my interiors, I would love to use this color story. And it was really when I walked through this apartment, you know, the minute I saw the apartment, I said, wow, you know what? I think I'm going to use that color story for this room. And of course, for this color story, I had to sort of add my own touch to it. So those of you who know my work know that I love to use this wonderful sort of mustardy brown taupey color that I call brown paper bag, which was my living room on Park Avenue many years ago. But I used that actually to do accented trim throughout the apartment. You might remember having seen that in the foyer. And I like to use one color thread that then travels throughout the apartment. So come and take a look at what I did with it in the dining room. There are so many advantages to living in Paris, but for me as a designer, the most important thing is inspiration. Whenever I feel my batteries are depleted from inspiration, I love coming here and just walking the streets and just taking it all in. Paris is the city of beauty, and I really feel like, I'm so inspired here. It really is an inspirational city in terms of design. Everything that they do here is all about the pretty. And of course the croissants and the baguettes, of course. I should really hold off on eating those, but I do anyway. I am actually, pretty proficient in French. All the years of coming here, I grew up in Canada, from Montreal, and Canadians do tend to be bilingual, although the Canadians in the West speak more English and the Canadians in the East speak more French. Luckily, Montreal is kind of a good blend of the two languages, and I had a lot of immersion in the French language growing up. My brother lived here for a long time, so I would come and visit him often. And I just have a love of the French culture, French language, so I immerse myself here, and I really force myself to talk to people in French when I'm here, and it actually helps me practice. Even though a lot of people here speak English, and at the beginning when I first came here, they'd all switch over to English. And I feel like now, after being coming here for so many years, that it's a little bit more of a compliment to myself, where they don't change anymore. They actually continue speaking to me in French. So maybe that's a sign that I've improved my French a little bit. As with most designers who love to entertain at home, this fabulous countertop became doubles actually as a bar. So I love to have a fabulous tray. Some great, bottles of, things to serve for people. And, another thing that I loved was the concept of creating the shelf for display. The idea of sort of having, great ceiling height, and to use that ceiling height is key. Just creating, a little bit of a feature wall. And I love to mix eccentric things together. So there's a sort of a collection of brass candlesticks, this eccentric, view of Venice, and then what I think is actually the dome of St. Peter's. I think it's St. Peter's, because I think there's like a little palm tree there. So I found that in a thrift shop in New York. I love that piece. The cabinet, in contrast to the rest of the apartment, is sort of a little bit more contemporary. Because it sort of landed like a spaceship into this dining room space. It really needed to be a little bit more contemporary. And so I painted it all black. There are some really little fun gold lines that go through it, almost like a little Mondrian painting. And of course, honed marble top is, for me, the essence of a beautiful marble piece. I'm never really too concerned about staining marble. When you think about all the beautiful interiors in Italy, they have these wonderful 200-year-old countertops that are like stained with hundreds of years of olive oil stains, and they tend to look beautiful. So I love the honed, unsealed, beautiful Calcutta marble. I'll take that any day over any man-made products, that's for sure. The architecture of this room is what really drove the inspiration from my design, and it really all started with this wonderful chevron floor. The chevron floors are all original to the apartment, and I worked carefully with my contractor to restore them, and I just think that they're brilliant. And it's amazing how such an old floor could really have such a modern feeling to it. We're using chevron floors today in modern interiors, and it's still very contextually relevant. This is a fabulous Biedermeier table that I actually bought in a thrift shop in New York City. Can you even believe it? And it had its day in my entrance foyer in my house in Montreal, and it ended up here. And I always love to sort of put different chairs around a dining table. I think it's more whimsical, it's more fun. So I put these two armchairs on the ends, and I mixed them with these two side chairs. But if you pay close attention, you'll actually see that the fabric is the same. So the fabric is actually this wonderful Chelsea Editions diamond. And unfortunately now it's been discontinued, but when they had this fabric, I used to use it all the time. So on the armchairs I did the very pale green, and on the side chairs I did the brown. So I think it's a really sort of a fun way to relate two chairs that are actually unrelated and organize them around a space. Then one of my favorite shops in Paris, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a little perfume shop, and they have these wonderful little bouillotte lamps that sit right on their countertop. So when I saw this lamp at the Paris Flea Market, I thought, oh gosh, I really want to have this on my dining table, because it's sort of unexpected. And when you see this dining table, you actually see it when you come in from the front door. You're looking right through. So I wanted this table to almost feel like it could be like a center table and not, just a dining table. So it really helped me do that by placing this as a lamp here. It's really cute. One of my favorite elements in this room is this fabulous wooden chandelier. It's a lantern. And when I purchased it, I bought this from the Paris flea markets, and the vendor told me that it was actually 18th century, but I'm not sure. I don't know. But it really just has a beautiful raw quality about it, and I think it contrasts well with all the other polished details of the space. The built-in bookcase behind the banquette is another opportunity to sort of add some whimsical character to the room. So I always love using built-in bookcases to add a little bit of animation and some personality. So of course, it's not just for plates and dishes and fancy things. You have sort of overflow of books and other interesting little objects. And again, inspired by that perfume shop that we saw, we put these wonderful little applique candles up there, which are really fun to light when you're having a great party. So in this room also I have these wonderful canvas pieces. Like this was actually another printed canvas that I had in my house in Montreal. It made its way over here. And these wonderful sculpture pedestals. But when I first purchased them, I thought, oh, I'm going to paint them. But then they made their way here, and I just kind of love the contrasting color. I think that sometimes a room needs to have a foreign element. Something that you would never think to mix into a room and be like, oh, I never thought to put it there, but it actually looks so good there. So these appliques were actually arms of an old chandelier that were repurposed. So this actually would sit into a chandelier, and we had the contractor build these little clips on the wall, and they just sit right in there, and they're actually movable. Isn't that fun? Just very whimsical. So again, also, I'm never afraid to mix color and pattern. So another opportunity on this wonderful, antique cognac leather bench was to put in, a few personality pillows. So this is a wonderful flame stitch chevron from Schumacher. This is a fabulous Greek key, sort of an homage and a reflection back to the carpet that's in the living room. And then again, a spot of yellow, for that foreign element in the room. Speaking of which, I used yellow actually as a cuff on the undersides of the curtains in this room. I had picked this wonderful chevron Missoni-like fabric. It's actually from Castel, Maison Castel, one of my favorite fabric showrooms. And I love the personality of the movement of the chevron in the fabric with the floor. And I think that's a very subtle connection. But I didn't want it to just touch the floor. I wanted there to be a little bit of a separation between the two. So I decided that I would cuff the curtains with a very tall cuff in a yellow. Which again is sort of a little bit of an unexpected, a little foreign element coming through, and works perfectly with the foreign element sculpture pedestal. This fantastic chair is actually one of a pair. I used them originally in my Kip Space show house back in 2016, which was a chalk paneled room. Some of you might remember that project. It was really fun. And I love these chairs. I found them also at the Paris Flea Market. And there's a right and a left. So one of them has the angle going to the right and the other one goes to the left. And I bookended this entire apartment with these two chairs, so you'll see the other one that appears back in my bedroom when we get over there. But again, I put the Greek key fabric on here, which is again, sort of a connection back to the living room Greek key. And I just love the whimsical character of the legs. They're these little Corinthian columns. Look how fantastic these are. The chairs themselves actually have the personality of the architecture of the apartment in them, which is wonderful. So in the mornings, my favorite thing to do is actually to make tea and sit in this corner. And continuing the amphithéâtre concept through the space, these wonderful mirrors are actually a terminus of the view looking in from the living room. See what I mean? It's fabulous, isn't it? So the original kitchen was this lovely little pokey little kitchen space that's off of the dining area. And I really, sort of made the most of it. It has a hidden refrigerator, a little cabinet here for storage, a dishwasher, voila, beeps, and a little sink, But the most important thing to me in Paris, when you come to Paris, is you must get yourself this fabulous tea. This goes back to the concept of the scent of the space. This is the most brilliant scented tea, and I love it. It's Mariage Frère, and it's their black opera tea. It really is. I'm like doing an advertisement for them. But I'm addicted to this. It's fabulous. So every time I come to Paris, I must run to Mariage Frère and get my tea. And of course, my Nespresso machine. It was the very first thing I bought when I moved to Paris. When I bought my apartment in Paris, I was like, ran to the shop and said, I must have an Nespresso. So it's small but very practical. And then the idea of using large artwork in a small space is really fun. This fantastic, gigantic scene of Venice, it's unexpected. It's it's one of these foreign element things that, gives the room a scale that you would normally not, think to use in a space like this. But it really it extends the grandeur into an otherwise not grand space. So the dining room actually spills out into this space. And this is actually the most adorable little jewel box of a room. And I love powder rooms. So this is my homage to Napoleon. Come and take a look. Isn't this the cutest little powder room you've ever seen in your life? It's so cute. I always love to use furniture pieces for vanities. And this was a little piece of furniture that was revamped to use as a little vanity. And of course, again, the concept of using giant art in a space is key to making a space feel like it's actually more grand than it is. So this giant canvas takes up the entire space. It's fabulous. The ceiling is actually characterized by this vintage toile de Juillet wallpaper. It's sort of an idyllic scene. It's kind of a funny little play on Napoleon and his original roots. And then I have this fabulous root mirror that I actually bought at Arteriers many years ago. I just had not found the right home for it until I bought this apartment. And then when I got that wallpaper, I said, what a great thematic relationship between the branches of this fabulous mirror and that crazy, idyllic little farm theme wallpaper border. It's fabulous, isn't it? So revamping a piece of furniture and reinventing it and using it for a new purpose is always really fun. I often try and shop and find old pieces of furniture that need a new life. So in this instance, we had this green marble backsplash. So the vanity was painted in the green to match the backsplash as closely as possible. And I think it was a great detail. The hammered custom brass sink basin fits perfectly, and it's very shallow because, as everything in Paris, everything is quite tight. This is actually a really small little bathroom space. The amphithéâtre concept is also continued through this space because what this is actually a pair of doors on this side of the hallway. This is the grand entry foyer again. So you have a pair of doors here, and that's actually reflected on the other side with a pair of doors that go into the bedroom. Come and take a look at this. I actually had a large apartment on Park Avenue for many years, and I sort of got tired of all the guests staying with me, and actually I'm so happy now in New York and Paris. I have a small apartment. When guests come to visit me, I love to put them up in New York at the University Club or in Paris at one of the boutique hotels in this lovely little neighborhood. This apartment is located in the 9th arrondissement, which is really close to the Paris Opera. I really told my real estate broker I wanted something very French and very authentic. I really wanted to be in a neighborhood where you walk out the door and you don't hear a stick of English, which is exactly what this neighborhood is. there's a wonderful street right next door to mine, which is really iconic. It's called Rue de Martyrs. And there are some wonderful little shops on that street, and those shops have literally been there for like 100 years. There's a little cheesemonger shop there that's been there for 200 years. It's unbelievable. This apartment to me is really my getaway. You know, everyone needs a getaway in their life, and you know, especially being, you know, an interior designer in New York City, life is so hectic. There's so much going on, and coming to Paris for me is really my getaway. So I really love to luxuriate and really treat myself, and as I give you the tour of the house, you'll see in many instances how I was able to do that with this space. So you see what I mean? This pair of doors is a perfect reflection of the doors opposite to the powder room. It's wonderful to create that sense of perfect symmetry. Come on through and take a look at my bedroom. Bedrooms to me really need to be cozy and comfortable and a cocoon-like feeling. So that's why I always use canopy beds for my own personal beds. I always find it difficult to get clients to, you know, convince them to do canopy beds, so I ended up doing them for me in all my residences because I just love the feeling of being in a bed like this. When you have a big ceiling height in a space like this for a bedroom, it's always great to have a canopy bed because it creates a little bit of intimacy within the room. So this is kind of like a little bit of a room within a room. The canopy, the valance creates a little bit of a cocoon-like effect. And I love the, you know, architecture within architecture. The bed is this fabulous iron bed that I found in the Paris flea markets. It has beautiful iron work on it. And I wanted to continue the iron theme by creating this fabulous pair of bedside tables. These are actually tray top tables. They're Gustavian. I just think that they have the greatest little details. And then sort of to continue the theme of the iron, you know, the rawness of the iron, I actually designed this burlap bedside, it's like a bedspread actually on top of the bed because I love the raw quality of it. And then the burlap is almost the same color as the walls, which is really great. So it really jumps the walls onto the bed. But of course, you know, when I use, you know, a rough material like burlap, it's always really fun to like trim it with a little bit of a fringe trim, so to sort of gild the lily. It's sort of an unexpected little detail to add a little bit of a fringe onto burlap. It's actually kind of fun. I'm all about mixing patterns and textures. So on my bed, I always love to use my own bed pillows. So here's a trick. When you buy your bed linens, just buy your sheets. Don't buy the bed pillows. You know, the bed pillows are really not necessary. You can actually have your own bed pillows. And I love to mix color and patterns and textures. So this is a fabulous Etro fabric that was through Clarence House, which has unfortunately been discontinued now, but I loved this fabric when they had it. I used to use it on all my projects. And you see how, you know, mixing different patterns and textures really works. It sort of helps pull the whole room together. Animating your bedside tables is one of the most fun and interesting things to do. Of course, I love to have a book, something that I might be reading or in the middle of reading. But then, of course, little eccentric little things like these little birds. And I actually found these when I was shopping with a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine in the Paris flea markets. And this sort of reminds me of when we went through on a really rainy day and we found these. And it was really special, and it's a good memory. It's fun to have. The bookcases behind the bed really helped me animate the back of the bed wall, and I think that they're fun, and there was a great opportunity in there to use the contrasting color of the red just a little bit of a pop of color. It brings in sort of the orangey red from the pillows on the bed, as well as, you know, reminiscent of my fabulous red color tones in the living room. So it's a wonderful thing. The room was very symmetrical again. The bookcases were actually here. And the built-in closets are wonderfully augmented by mirrored panels. And this is actually a great little decorative trim that I actually purchased from Samuel & Son. It's actually a tape trim with a nailhead stud on it. And I felt like that was such a great little detail just to bring a little bit of the red from the living room in here. It's a wonderful detail. This was a fabulous little Anglo-Indian chaise that I purchased from the Paris flea market. And for many years, it was in my house in Montreal. and I just love it. It's just this great little recliner. It's simple, but it has so many wonderful little details about it. You know, starting with the curvature on the back. I think it sort of like is a great way to enter the room. It's such a gentle curve. The stretcher is wonderful, and sort of the bobbin detail on the legs and the cross stretchers is wonderful. I use this fabulous mohair velvet. I love mohair. It's one of my favorite blue tones. Mohair is great because it always different lights makes mohair look differently in different angles, and it gives a lot of personality to a fabric like that. This is one of my favorite pillows of all time. This fabric is actually from Schumacher from a while ago, was discontinued. And when they discontinued, I ran into Schumacher and I begged them to give me all the samples that were left of it so I can make pillows with them. Again, the idea of the large canvas art, it's a great way to anchor a room, especially when you have a large wall such as this. And then I like to actually paint a room such as this all one color. So here's a great tip for you guys at home. When you have a room that you have you want to pull everything together, it's always nice to paint the trim and the walls all one color. So in this room, I actually threaded in that brown paper bag color that I was using as the trim in the dining room and the bookcases in the living room, and actually the crown of the entrance foyer. So really, that color presents itself in a couple of different ways, in a couple of different areas in the apartment. It really pulls everything together so nicely. Then we have this Greek key chair, and actually if you saw the floor plan of the apartment, you'd understand that this is actually diametrically opposite from the chair that's in the dining room. So I kind of think it's kind of fun. It's kind of a whimsical little, they face each other through the whole apartment. So it's a lovely little detail. And then again, my large canvas art. I love this fabric actually. This is a Christopher Farr fabric. It's wonderful. It's called Chicago. In color tobacco. It's actually one of their more modern fabrics. I'm actually working with Christopher Farr on reinventing one of their colors of one of their fabrics, so keep an eye out for that. That's coming out soon. As you guys all know, an interior designer's work is never done, so sorry about the mess on my desk. But this is actually a work in progress, and in every one of my residences I always have to have just a little place where I can do my work. So before you guys got here, I'm happy to give you this fabulous grand tour of my apartment. It's a great little break from what I'm working on right now, but of course every time I have my own residence I always make sure that I have a great little spot to work. There's a lovely little window in my bedroom. It has a lot of great light. And in the winter, I love to crack the window open and listen to the sounds of the city in the background. I love to drink my mariage fair tea and work on my sketches. I do a lot of hand sketches, so that's why it's kind of a mess. And opposite from the bed is this wonderful chinoiserie cabinet that I purchased at Christie's several years ago. This was actually in my guest bedroom in Montreal, and I'm so glad that it found its way back into this room and helps augment my sprinkling of red as my accent color throughout the guest bedroom. Of course, in this room, the ceilings are so much higher than my house in Montreal. I was able to even get this gigantic canvas artwork up there. And I always love to layer. Layering is one of the most important things in design, to make it feel like the decorator wasn't just there. It's always fun to sort of put, many different layers together. So instead of just having the canvas up there, I had this wonderful little painting that sits in front of it. And then, of course, a stack of books and this fabulous little object that I bought in the Paris flea markets. And for good luck. It's so important to have a proper bathroom to luxuriate in. Come and see my fabulous bathroom. And even adding this little decorative mirror on the side was a really fun way to sort of break the balance and the symmetry of the space. It's kind of whimsical and it's kind of fun. So it's sort of like, in design, I like to not take yourself too seriously. It's always fun to be a little bit playful. So it's sort of unexpected to place this other random little mirror to the side. It's kind of fun because it breaks off that really stern sense of symmetry. It's just fun. These were just some fabulous bowling pins that I found at the Paris flea market. And I was like, these are just so chic and so fun. and add so much character and so much fun on the just right there on the windowsill. Of course, the topiaries add a little bit of green into the space, and then the Roman shade is really a decorative Roman shade. It does come down, but I did want to have that chevron pattern coming through it to sort of repeat the idea of that herringbone and chevron that appears in the floors throughout the apartment. It's kind of a very solid detail. Also, one of my favorite things to do, and I do this all the time, is painting borders on architecture. So this is just a double line border, and here that actually is the same color as what we saw in the other rooms. It's that brown paper bag, sort of mustardy taupe color that comes through. And doing a double line border, it's very easy to do. A contractor and the painter just taped it off and did it. It is very nice, and it gives the architecture a little bit of architecture where there is none. You know, there are no moldings on these doors. These are all flat panel doors, and just by adding those little lines, it really gave some structure and some design to them. This is the fabulous Paul Revere lantern that I purchased at Holly Hunt. It was one of my favorite light fixtures when it first came out. It's actually been around for a while now, but I thought the shape of it is so interesting. And again, I just love to treat my ceilings as a design element. So you'll see in this room, I actually painted the ceiling in this tealy blue-green, which repeats the green of the marble on the floors, that repeats the green that is in the dining room as well as in the powder room. So there is a connection between all the rooms throughout the apartment, which is wonderful. Even the ceiling of this little dressing area is mirrored for this cuckoo banana sort of effect. It's really great. And then I continued the wood floor right up until the edge of the dressing area, because that's the perfect transition between the stone floor of the bathroom and the wood floor of the closet. So the layering of the mirrors in this space is accentuated by this really eccentric duck foot mirror that I found actually in the south of France. And I was actually with friends down in Nice, and we were going in and out of some shops. And the minute I saw it, I said, oh, I have to have this for my bathroom. Isn't it just cute and whimsical? It's just great to counterbalance the seriousness of the architecture of the space with just something fun and friendly. Well, home is actually the most personal reflection of one's character and one's personality. So whenever I work on interiors for my clients, I always try and get to know them really well, only because I really want to draw out of them, what their personal tastes are and what they like and what they don't like. Of course, when I do my own interiors, I'm very fastidious about exactly what I want to do. And, my clients always remark, you do your interiors, your own home so quickly. I'm like, well, I walk into a space, it speaks to me, and the minute I come into the space, I know exactly what I would do for myself. And I tend to give my clients, that effect too. I always tell them, this is what I would do, this is my house. But then I have to listen to them and take that, the cue from their own personality and sort of develop the interior based on that. So home to me is a very personal thing. And being able to reflect one's personality, one's character. I love the idea that people look at my Instagram and they always recognize and realize an interior that's mine. And even though sometimes it's my own personal residence, or if it's a client residence, they can see my personal touch on people's homes, but they also remark that every interior that I do is different, and distinctively so, because I like to really hone in on my clients and their character and their personalities.
Thanks for watching. For more Homeworthy content, be sure to like and subscribe.